Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick King from Urban Green Lab here, and you are here for another edition of Sustainable Nashville Live. This is the interview series that hopefully kind of bridges that gap between the public and those wonderful change makers working in and around sustainability here in Nashville. And today I'm here with Melody Gibson of the Civic Design Center. Hello. Before we get started, a couple of things to know. First and foremost is that Urban Green Lab is a nonprofit. And if you feel so inclined to support the work that we do, you can make a donation to us. Our website is www.urbangreenlab.org. Go there and just click support. You'll be able to make a donation. Or you can text 44321 Team UGL to that number, and you'll get a link sent to your phone and donate that way. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to our YouTube, just Urban Green Lab, YouTube, click the bell to subscribe. You're doing us a big favor. With that, let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, Melody, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Loving the weather from working at home as I can work outside.
Yeah. It's we were talking about it before, but it's a pretty nice fall day. Leaves are falling. There's a nice breeze. I don't need to tell you about that. Yeah, it's a good day to be working outside.
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of under a tree, so you might see some.
Just really selling the fall. It's just going to be like oak leaves falling down behind you.
Exactly.
To get started, I guess, could you tell us a little bit about what the Civic Design Center is and some of the work that you all do?
Sure. So the Civic Design Center is a nonprofit that advocates for civic design that will benefit all communities. And I think the most important part is that we really seek to engage communities in that process so that we have spaces that work for everyone in our city.
Okay. It's real short and sweet. What was that?
Oh, so it's very broad. That's our kind of our broad purpose. And of course, we have programs and initiatives that we'll talk more about.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say it's like short and sweet, but also like pretty broad. So we're gonna dig into that a little bit. How has COVID affected you all?
So with a lot of the community engagement work that we do, we've of course had to shift how we engage with communities and come up with new methods virtually, as pretty much everybody has done. Has probably been the biggest direct impact on the work that we do. I know, I work with the schools, and so we've had to shift all of our resources to a virtual format. So I think it's just adjusting to the socially distanced virtual world.
Yeah, I would say the same is true for us. It's just, programs don't stop. It's just how you deliver them and like the infrastructure you have changes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you tell me a little bit about yourself and what got you kind of interested in this line of work?
Sure. So I majored in architecture, was of course, loved design, and I graduated at a time during the recession where architecture was really taking a pretty big hit. And so I used that as an opportunity to just explore another passion that I had recently found, which was youth education and the education gap with that typically low-income communities were experiencing. And so I pursued a master's in teaching through an alternative program, Teach for America, and really enjoyed that. And then with the Civic Design Center, I was always kind of involved with them and really loved their work. And so I ended up with this opportunity to run this program that meshes the two worlds. And now I'm working with schools to basically embed design education and design thinking into the curriculum.
So kind of like a best of both passions just put together for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm so happy you were able to find that.
Oh yeah. It's really unique and great fit for me. So I'm lucky.
Excellent. And you're a Nashville native, correct?
Tennessee native. I'm from from a small town just outside of Memphis. So.
Okay. Kind of just getting into the nitty grittiness of a little bit of design, could you tell us about some design decisions that were either intentionally or unintentionally made, or rather kind of molded to not serve the people?
Sure. Well, I'll tell, this is back, I guess, in the 90s, and this is
Mm-hmm.
the story of how the Civic Design Center was founded. So there was a plan to put a highway where what we now is by the convention center downtown, Korean
Mm-hmm.
Veterans Boulevard. So originally that was planned to be a highway that was designed, of course, to move cars very quickly and did not have the pedestrian or biker experience in mind. And so a group of passionate, you know, urban designers, architects, and just really citizens in Nashville came together and created an alternative plan that had to do with using the street as a space for people and not just cars. And that ended up being a multimodal boulevard with green infrastructure that we see today. So that advocacy by the people really worked.
Mm-hmm.
And then that group is what eventually founded the Design Center.
Okay. Um, Thank you. I asked that to just kind of demonstrate that I feel like a lot of people don't realize like the design of a built environment and how that like affects just everything that they do. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this out there. Love the work that y'all do. So I might be gushing at a couple of times during this interview. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does equity relate to civic design and the work that you all do?
Yeah, well, of course, historically there have been a lot of inequitable, I guess is a nice way to put it, racially charged design decisions in our urban planning that have resulted in inequitable access to opportunities and neighborhoods, like redlining, for example, is a
Mm-hmm.
direct one I think a lot of people have heard about, to where property ownership has not been equitably distributed in the past, and we still see repercussions of that in our neighborhoods today. And so I think, um, moving forward in the work that we do is constantly trying to work within these systems that have kind of been set up over time that have oppressed people and not given access to resources that were needed, and trying to change the representation in who gets to decide what's best for whom,
Mm-hmm.
is a constant evolving thing that I think our city is facing, and we really try to have a strong voice in.
Yeah. And you had mentioned early on that you kind of like the Civic Design Center kind of works to like bridge that gap between community and the built environment that they all inhabit. Do you all have a specific program that does that, or is this kind of like an overarching mission for the organization?
It's an overarching mission, definitely. We do have different programs that have come from that, but I wouldn't say that um, we do constantly change what we're doing in some respects on our work,
Mm-hmm.
but we do have some regular programming. So I know our Urban Design Forum is one that actually started back during that story that I told with Korean Veterans Boulevard that we still have, where
Mm-hmm.
a group of experts and concerned citizens come together to discuss an issue or some type of design related to what's going on in the city at the moment. We also have what we call tactical urbanism. So that's where you can create a temporary change to just kind of open the community's eyes to how something could be different,
Mm-hmm.
or just test it out if you're wanting to see, if this is a good idea or not. So, for example, like pop-up bike lanes, um, pop-up parks, like we call them like kind of mini parks, parklets,
Mm-hmm.
um, just things like just basically infrastructure that communities want, and then we come in as the person that knows how to um, do this very tangible, hands-on advocacy for that change they want to see.
Yeah. And so kind of with the Metro Slow Streets initiative, would that kind of fall into the realm of, what was it, tactical urbanism or?
In some respects, yeah. So I would say tactical urbanism, well, the fact that it's temporary, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and typically, yeah, so tactical urbanism is temporary, and it would maybe look like how they, you know, like what is the signage, what is it that really slows people down, as that's a temporary thing that could be
Hmm.
called tactical urbanism.
Okay. I really like that phrase. Um, so, oh, and this kind of like syncs up with my next question is, one outcome that can kind of be drawn from all this year has given us is kind of a renewed focus and attention on public spaces, access to public spaces, and how we use them. Uh, so this is a two-part question. Why do you think that is, and where do you think this conversation will lead us?
Can you ask it one more time?
Okay, I'm sorry. So yeah, I think one part, like one outcome of like everything that's happened this year with like COVID and the economic downturn is that there's been a renewed focus and attention on public spaces and how we use them. Um, and my question for you is, why do you think that is, and where do you think that conversation will lead us?
Yeah, well, I think just the way that things are with COVID right now, at least, like there is a people are really we're seeing the need for public space as we can't necessarily be indoors with each other all the time, and so where can we gather safely, such as, I think that our park, I know at least in my neighborhood, my park is Greenway is used a lot more, and that's a public space. And then also, looking at public spaces, places like with a lot of the protests and things like that have been going on has been pretty, a lot of that discussion has been like who gets to use these spaces for what.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I think that's definitely two probably the most primary ways I've seen public space being changed and discussed during everything that's happened during 2020,
Mm-hmm.
um, are those two topics.
Okay. And where do you think that conversation will lead?
Lead.
Yeah.
So I think that we're seeing things like our streets, like the Slow Streets program. The more that we use streets for multimodal transportation and for social spaces such as the Slow Streets program so kids can play. We're seeing streets being transformed into public space for people. And so it's of course our hope that some of that is going to continue, and that as people are seeing streets or other public spaces being like really relied upon for sanity and for accessing resources and et cetera, um, that it will help people see streets for things other than just moving cars from point A to point B. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one hope, definitely. I'm trying to think. And also things such as, the outdoor dining. I know that there's talk being made of like
Mm-hmm.
how far can restaurants go now for outdoor dining. And so, yeah, we really hope to see just to read that people are getting to experience public space in a different light and seeing it as useful, for reasons that they hadn't necessarily thought of, and that will sit with people even after COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully, lead to more public space moving forward.
Yeah, on and upward into the future and beyond.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that kind of also leads into this next question. What would you say to someone who maybe isn't, glued into the conversation about civic design and public space? Why should they care?
Yeah, good question. Well, so I think, everybody, no matter who you are, relies on public space. And then also, I think that when we have successful public spaces, that the impacts on the community can be seen, just in a wealth of ways. Like, we kind of talked about the street as a public space as a way to bring the community together in a social way and provide different, more equitable access to transportation. And also, I think, seeing them as a way to gather diverse groups of people and be able to have different experiences in your community and really have somewhere like a central focus point for you to really be able to kind of rally around and be proud of and socialize and exchange experiences with people that you wouldn't normally interact with is valuable. And also the economic benefits to public space are immense. Like when you have successful public spaces where people want to be for whatever reason, people flock to it. And then naturally from that, there's economic benefits as people are just there. And then that feeds off of each other. It's like, okay, now we have this group businesses here, and that makes the public space more successful and back and forth. So it really is just essential to having a successful community.
Yeah. And you mentioned successful public spaces. What are some maybe that come to mind for you, or what are some of your favorite examples of successful public spaces?
Good question. In Nashville, or
it could be anywhere in the world.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I think the Italian plazas or piazzas are definitely some of the most well-known public spaces for good reasons. But yeah, I think just spaces that give, what I notice about them is that they just bring an energy to the city, and they encourage you don't want to be in your car in those kinds of cities. Like, you want to be out having an experience with culture and with different views that you get and different foods. And so you just feel like just because there is this large, densely populated plaza, that naturally feeds into how you experience that city, just from not wanting to be in your car. So it's probably my favorite.
Yeah. Do you think maybe a barrier to someone who's not glued into the issues, because I don't want to say people don't care, because as you said, everybody is involved and is a part of public space and needs public space. Do you think maybe people just aren't aware of this just because, especially in cities like Nashville, people are just spending so much time in their cars?
Yeah, I think, there's definitely, like, when you are really auto dependent, that's, it's kind of the culture is we're a car dependent culture, and we're not necessarily it's not something you would really think of is why would I need this public space in my community? But yeah, I mean, I think, if you think about, like, everybody loves to flock to like concerts and festivals and things like that, and you want areas that really can express who you are as it's also an expression of identity and your value. Like, do we have, which it can be controversial, like, what statue do we put in the middle of it, and or what kind of artwork do we put there? So it can definitely be an expression of identity for a group of people, and that can be really powerful as well, for a neighborhood or city or anybody.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more on that. And I guess I'll have to go visit those piazzas in Italy, because they just sound like a rip-roaring good time.
Yeah.
So how can members of the public support the work that you all do and get involved?
So we have a lot of events that people can attend if they're just interested in learning more, or networking in the non-COVID world is great for that. But yeah, a lot of events that are open to the public. So we have at least one event every month, an urban design forum, and then we have various other ones from time to time as well. And we have a membership where if you are a member, you get free access to those events. And then we have different ways to volunteer, like our tactical urbanism program. When we do have a project, we always need volunteers from the community to help get out and paint and build and things like that. And then we also have a youth education program where we need professionals to volunteer in classrooms with students. And yeah, the sign up for that is always open. But yeah, other than that, we have, of course, have different ways to financially support the work that we're doing. So.
Okay. And I'm going to be providing those links to y'all's websites and different ways for folks to sign up as well. So I got you there. And I have one more question for you, and this is kind of like the biggest and broadest one. But what is your sustainable vision for the city of Nashville? And I'm going to preface that maybe with you, if you had a magic wand.
Oh man, so many different all day about things that I would want to.
Let's get to them. Yeah.
I would say if I had to narrow it down, density. I think so many sustainable design practices depend on density, and public transit doesn't work if you don't have density, and if you walkability and biking don't work if you don't have density. And that's the only way that we're really going to lower our, at least car emissions. And also, biodiversity and natural resources, they're preserved when you have density. As you densify your core or your neighborhood centers, in a smart way, of course, have it designed to where it can work well. That naturally will lead to preservation of land and higher water quality, as we don't have as much urban stormwater runoff. Public transit that has a higher usage, and therefore we can have a better, more frequent system than what we have now. So yeah, I guess I did kind of sum it up.
That was. I ask interviewees this question often, and that was the most succinct way to kind of just wrap it up. But I have a little bit of a follow-up question for you. Still with that magic wand, what are some things that we can do in Nashville to make it more dense? Is that a question about zoning, or?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do, I guess a lot of it does have to do with zoning and what we allow where, and I also think like we are densifying our pikes to an extent. But what's happening is like a lot of that is making more traffic and is making more congestion. And so I think the transit conversation and the density go hand in hand. Like right now, it's like, it would be really, really awful it would be really difficult to densify without public transit. And so I think with that being at the forefront of the city right now, having a new transit plan out, and it really being a hot topic of discussion, that is one way that that people can really pay attention and advocate and be involved and potentially vote if we ever have a referendum. So we really, are at a point where if we don't end up soon with dedicated funding, I'll kind of pitch that on public transit, then it's just really hard to have what we need in order to have the density. So those things go hand in hand. And I think that would be kind of my quick win for people that are wanting to get involved and advocate.
Okay. So I guess everyone, you heard that from Melody. Your homework is to review the transit plan and get in touch with your city council representatives. And I'll be providing all of those links as well.
Great.
All right. So one last question. If viewers have any additional questions, how can they get in touch with you or the Civic Design Center?
So they can get in touch. They're welcome to just email me. It's melody@civicdesigncenter.org. Our website, I think, has everyone's email. Yeah, it has our staff on there and everyone's email, and a place where you can sign up if you're just wanting to sign up for something. Yeah, everything's on our website at civicdesigncenter.org.
Okay. And before we wrap up, are there any events, things in general you want to plug?
So our annual luncheon is probably our big event that's coming up now. It is mid-November, can't remember the day exactly, but anyways, it's going to be community conversations that are about how it's about community-led change. And so it is a fundraiser. So for that one, there is a fee, but we, think of course it's really worth it for anybody who's wanting to learn from experts about community-led change on a lot of the different topics that I've talked about today.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, well, you've sold me on it, so I'm gonna go ahead and purchase my ticket.
Great.
Yeah. Well, Melody, thank you so much for being with me here today. Next week we're gonna be, excuse me. Next week we're gonna be interviewing Meg Morgan. She's the campaign manager with Root Nashville. If you have any questions for Meg, or you just want to get in touch with me and let me know that there's an organization out there that you would like to learn more about, feel free to email me at patrick@urbangreenlab.org. And if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, you should go ahead and do that as well. If you just go to our Facebook, then you'd just be right under there, under newsletter sign up. But that is all I have for y'all today. Until next time, remember to live sustainably.